They thought she was just a seat filler. They thought her silence was submission. They were wrong. Dead wrong. When billionaire CEO Cynthia Desmond was told she didn't look like she belonged in first class by a snobbish couple who demanded she be moved to the back, she didn't scream. She didn't throw a drink. She simply unlocked her phone and made a 30-second call that would erase the airline's stock value by 40% and leave 2 passengers bankrupt before their luggage even hit the carousel. This isn't just a story about racism on a plane. This is a masterclass in silent destruction. You are not ready for the ending. The air inside the cabin of Flight 908, bound from New York's JFK to London Heathrow, was stale, recycled, and smelled faintly of expensive leather and pre-flight champagne. It was a Tuesday in November, the kind of grey, drizzly afternoon that made the warm, amber lighting of the first-class cabin feel like a sanctuary. In seat 1A sat Cynthia Desmond. To the untrained eye, Cynthia was unremarkable. She wore a charcoal wool coat over a simple cream turtleneck, her hair pulled back into a severe, functional bun. She wasn't dripping in logos. There was no Gucci belt buckle flashing in the overhead lights, no Louis Vuitton monogrammed carry-on visible. She was reading a paperback novel with a cracked spine, sipping sparkling water. She was 52, black, and possessed a stillness that often unsettled people, though they rarely understood why. She had just closed her eyes to rest before takeoff when the commotion began at the front galley. "I'm sorry, I just don't see how this is possible," a shrill voice cut through the low hum of the engines. "We booked 1B and 1C specifically to have the front row privacy, and now that is there." Cynthia didn't open her eyes, but she paused her breathing for a fraction of a second. She knew the tone. She had heard it in boardrooms in Zurich, in golf clubs in Georgia, and in high-end boutiques in Paris. It was the sound of entitlement curdling into aggression. 2 passengers swept into the cabin, trailed by a flustered flight attendant named Jessica. The passengers were Gregory and Beatrice Whitmore. Gregory was a man who looked like he had been constructed entirely out of ham and golf tan, wearing a navy blazer with gold buttons that strained against his midsection. Beatrice was thin, sharp-angled, and drowning in her oversized faux fur collar that looked like a distressed badger. "Sir, Mrs. Whitmore," Jessica said, her voice trembling slightly. "Seat 1A was booked 3 months ago. The cabin is full. We cannot ask a passenger to move simply because you want the row to yourselves." Gregory stopped right next to Cynthia's seat. He didn't look at her. He looked over her, as if she were a piece of misplaced luggage. "It's not just about the row, sweetheart," Gregory said, his voice booming. He flashed a platinum frequent flyer card, tapping it against Jessica's clipboard. "Do you see this? We are Diamond Tier Legacy members. We spend more on this airline in a year than you'll make in a decade. We requested a compatible seating arrangement." Beatrice leaned in, her voice a stage whisper that was meant to be heard. "She doesn't belong here, Gregory. Look at her. She's probably an upgrade, an employee pass. It makes me uncomfortable. I want to relax on this flight, not worry about security." Cynthia slowly lowered her book. She turned her head, her movements deliberate and fluid. She looked up at Beatrice, her expression unreadable. "I assure you, ma'am," Cynthia said, her voice a low, smooth contralto, "my security clearance is quite sufficient, and I paid for this seat." Beatrice recoiled as if the seat itself had spoken. "Oh, it speaks! Listen here. We have a very important merger to attend to in London. We need space. We need quiet. And frankly, we don't want to sit next to someone who looks like they're going to recline their seat and listen to loud music the whole way." "Beatrice, let me handle this," Gregory snapped. He turned his attention to the flight attendant. "Get the purser, now. I want this woman moved to business or coach. I don't care. Just get her out of my periphery. I'm not flying 6 hours to London next to affirmative action." The cabin went silent. The other first-class passengers, a tech CEO in 2A, a famous architect in 3C, buried their heads in their tablets, practicing the modern art of aggressive ignoring. Cynthia placed a bookmark in her novel. She didn't look angry. She looked bored. "I suggest you take your seats," she said calmly. "The doors are closing in 5 minutes." "Don't you tell me what to do," Gregory snarled, his face reddening. "I know the VP of operations for this airline. One text from me, and you'll be on the no-fly list. Now move your ass before I have security drag you off." The situation escalated with the arrival of the purser, a tall man named Arthur, with a perfectly groomed moustache and a spine made of jelly. He had been working for the airline, Aero Vantage, for 15 years, and his survival strategy was simple: appease the loudest wallet. Arthur surveyed the scene. He saw the Whitmores, obvious wealth, platinum tags, loud voices. He saw Cynthia, quiet, unassuming, reading a paperback. He made a calculation. It was a fatal calculation. "Mr. Whitmore," Arthur said, using his soothing customer service voice, "I apologize for the disturbance. I understand you are unhappy with your seatmate." "Unhappy is an understatement," Beatrice huffed, clutching her pearls. "I feel unsafe." She gave me a look. Arthur turned to Cynthia. He didn't ask for her name. He didn't check the manifest to see who she actually was. He simply saw the path of least resistance. "Ma'am," Arthur said, leaning down, "we have a situation. To ensure the comfort of all our premium guests, I'm going to have to ask you to relocate." Cynthia raised an eyebrow. "Relocate? To where? The flight is full." "We have a seat available in Economy Plus," Arthur said, offering a tight, pained smile. "Row 24. It has extra legroom. We will, of course, refund the difference in your ticket price and offer you a voucher for future travel." Cynthia stared at him. "Let me understand this correctly, Arthur Penn. You are asking me to leave the first-class seat I paid full fare for, $15,000 to be precise, to move to row 24 because these two people don't like the color of my skin?" "Now let's not bring race into this," Gregory interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. "It's about class. It's about atmosphere. You just don't fit the vibe." Arthur nodded nervously. "It's a compatibility issue, ma'am. The captain has been informed of a disturbance. If you don't move voluntarily, we will have to classify this as passenger non-compliance. That involves airport police." The threat hung in the air. Passenger non-compliance. In the post-9/11 world, that was a terrifying label. It meant handcuffs, detention, and a permanent record. Cynthia looked at Arthur. Then she looked at Gregory, who was smirking triumphantly. "You are threatening to arrest me if I don't give up my seat to them?" Cynthia asked, her voice dropping an octave. It wasn't a question of fear. It was a question of verification. She wanted it on the record. "I am asking you to follow crew instructions," Arthur said, his patience thinning. "We need to push back. Move, now." Cynthia took a deep breath. She reached into her tote bag. "She's got a weapon!" Beatrice shrieked, jumping back. Cynthia pulled out her phone. She didn't unlock it yet. She simply held it. "Very well," Cynthia said softly. She unbuckled her seatbelt. She stood up. She was taller than Beatrice, and wearing flats, she looked Gregory dead in the eye. "I will move, but I want you to remember this moment, Gregory. I want you to remember that you asked for this." Yeah, save the drama for the bus," Gregory laughed. He high-fived Arthur. "Good man. I'll make sure to mention your name in my commendation letter." Cynthia gathered her things. She didn't look back. She walked past the champagne, past the lie-flat beds, through the curtain, and into the narrow, crowded aisle of economy. She found row 24. It was the middle seat. The window seat was occupied by a teenager with headphones, the aisle by a mother with a crying infant. Cynthia sat down. She placed her bag under the seat in front of her. The legroom was negligible. The air was stifling. She unlocked her phone. She didn't call customer service. She didn't call a lawyer. She opened her contacts and scrolled to a number saved simply as Jonathan, Chairman. Jonathan Everson was the chairman of the board for the global conglomerate that owned AeroVantage. He was also Cynthia's old college debate partner from Harvard, and currently the man whose entire career depended on the approval of the private equity firm Cynthia founded and controlled, Obsidian Capital. It was 4:15 p.m. Cynthia pressed dial. "Cynthia?" Jonathan's voice answered on the second ring, sounding surprised. "I thought you were in the air. Everything all right?" "Hello, Jonathan," Cynthia said, her voice calm, cutting through the background noise of the crying baby next to her. "I am currently on flight 908. I'm sitting in seat 24B. 24B? Jonathan laughed nervously. "Did you lose a bet? Why aren't you in first? I know you booked 1A. We flagged it for VIP treatment." "I was in 1A, Cynthia said, "but the flight crew, specifically a purser named Arthur and a passenger named Gregory Whitmore, decided I wasn't compatible with the cabin. They threatened to have me arrested if I didn't move to coach to accommodate Mr. Whitmore's preference for a whiter view." There was a silence on the other end of the line. It was a heavy, terrified silence. Jonathan knew who Cynthia Desmond was. He knew that Obsidian Capital held a 28% controlling stake in the airline's parent company. He knew that Cynthia was currently reviewing the renewal of the airline's fleet leasing contract, a contract worth $4.2 billion. "They what?" Jonathan whispered. "I'm going to turn my phone off now for takeoff, Jonathan," Cynthia said pleasantly. "We land in London in 7 hours. By the time I land, I want you to explain to me why I shouldn't pull the leasing contract and bankrupt this airline by tomorrow morning. Also, look up Gregory Whitmore. He claims he knows the VP of Operations. I want to know who he is, who he works for, and why he feels comfortable commandeering your aircraft. Cynthia, wait. I'll call the pilot. Goodbye, Jonathan. I have to listen to the safety demonstration now. Apparently in row 24, I need to know how to buckle a seatbelt." She hung up. She turned her phone off. She crossed her hands in her lap. As the plane taxied to the runway, Cynthia Desmond smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator watching a trap snap shut. Up in first class, Gregory and Beatrice clinked their champagne glasses. "To getting what we deserve," Gregory toasted. They had no idea that they were currently flying inside a missile that was aimed directly at their own lives. While Flight 908 cruised at 35,000 feet over the Atlantic, effectively a sealed metal tube disconnected from the world, the ground beneath it was beginning to quake. In downtown Chicago, on the 44th floor of the AeroVantage Global Headquarters, the atmosphere in Jonathan Everson's office had shifted from a lazy Tuesday afternoon to a scene reminiscent of a bomb disposal unit. Jonathan stared at his phone as if it were a radioactive isotope. He was a man who had survived hostile takeovers, union strikes, and fuel crisis. But the 30-second phone call from Cynthia Desmond terrified him more than all of those combined. He pressed the intercom button on his desk, his finger trembling slightly. "Margaret, clear my schedule. Cancel the dinner with the senator. Get the VP of Operations, the Chief Legal Officer, and the Head of Public Relations in here, now. And get me the file on a passenger named Gregory Whitmore." "Is everything all right, sir?" Margaret asked, her voice crackling through the speaker. "No, Margaret." Jonathan wiped sweat from his forehead. "We just evicted the woman who owns our debt from her seat. We are about to be liquidated." Within 20 minutes, the war room, a glass-walled conference room usually reserved for crash investigations, was filled with the airline's top brass. They looked confused and annoyed at the sudden summons. "What's this about, John?" asked Bill Henderson, the VP of Operations. "I was on the back 9. "You know the Obsidian Capital Fleet lease renewal?" Jonathan asked, his voice deadly quiet. "The one we need to sign by Friday, to keep our 75 new Dreamliners in the air? The one that keeps our stock from crashing to junk status?" "Yeah, sure," Bill nodded, pouring himself a water. "It's a done deal. We're just waiting for the signature from their mysterious chairman." "The chairman isn't mysterious, Bill. Her name is Cynthia Desmond," Jonathan said, and she is currently sitting in seat 24B on flight 908 to London. The room went silent. Why is she in 24B? The chief legal officer, a sharp woman named Sarah, asked slowly. Our manifest flagged her for 1A. I personally oversaw the VIP protocol. Because, Jonathan said, projecting a photo onto the smart screen at the head of the table, this man, Mr. Gregory Whitmore, didn't like her look. He demanded she be moved. And your crew, Bill, specifically a purser named Arthur, threatened to arrest our biggest investor if she didn't comply. Bill Henderson choked on his water. They moved Cynthia Desmond to coach for Gregory Whitmore. Who is Gregory Whitmore? Sarah asked, opening her laptop. Is he a diplomat? A royal? A head of state? Jonathan threw a dossier onto the table. It slid across the mahogany surface and hit Bill's hand. That is the question I needed answered. Security just pulled his file. Bill opened the folder. He scanned the document, and his expression shifted from fear to absolute bewilderment. He's a nobody, Bill muttered. Well, not a nobody. He's the CEO of Whitmore Logistics. It's a mid-sized freight forwarding company based in New Jersey. Wait, Sarah typed furiously on her keyboard. Whitmore Logistics. That sounds familiar. It should, Jonathan said grimly. They are currently under audit. They've been petitioning for a bridge loan to avoid bankruptcy. Guess who they applied to? Sarah stopped typing. She looked up, her eyes wide. Obsidian Capital. Exactly. Jonathan paced the room, his tie loosened. This man, this Gregory Whitmore, is flying to London to beg for money. He is flying there to meet with the European director of Obsidian Capital to save his failing company. And on the way there, he just racially profiled and evicted the owner of Obsidian Capital from her seat. Does he know who she is? Bill asked. Clearly not, Jonathan said. Cynthia keeps a low profile. No social media, no press photos. She lets her money speak. And right now, her money is screaming. The phone in the center of the conference table buzzed. It was the chief financial officer calling in from New York. Jonathan, the CFO's voice was frantic. I'm seeing a massive sell-off order queued for tomorrow morning on the Asian markets. It's coming from a shell corporation we've tracked to Obsidian. If that order goes through, it triggers a liquidity crisis. Our credit rating will tank. We'll be insolvent by noon. She's not waiting, Jonathan whispered. She's pulling the trigger. Fix it, the CFO screamed. Get her back in first class. Get the pilot to turn the plane around. Do something. We can't turn around, Bill said, looking at the flight tracker on the screen. They are past the point of no return over the Atlantic. If we divert, it becomes a news story. Billionaire forces plane to land because she was moved seats. The press will eat us alive. We need to handle this quietly. Quietly, Jonathan laughed, a hollow, desperate sound. She told me she wants me to explain why she shouldn't destroy us. We have 6 hours until that planer lands at Heathrow. We need to prepare a reception that would make the Queen of England jealous. And we need to prepare a funeral for Mr. Whitmore. I want the flight crew interviewed, Sarah said, her lawyer instincts kicking in. I want the cockpit voice recorder pulled the second they land. I want to know exactly what was said. If there was a racial component, and knowing Cynthia, she wouldn't make that claim lightly, we are looking at a PR nuclear winter. Get the London station manager on the line, Jonathan barked. Tell him to hire every private security guard available. Tell him to get the finest town car in London, and tell him to print a termination letter for a purser named Arthur. What about Whitmore? Bill asked. He's a Diamond member. Technically, he didn't break a policy if the crew authorized the move. Jonathan walked to the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. Policies are for people who don't own the bank, Bill. Gregory Whitmore didn't just break a policy. He broke the natural order of things. He insulted the hand that feeds him. When that plane lands, I want his frequent flyer account terminated. I want his return ticket cancelled. and I want him to know exactly who he sat next to." "He's going to sue," Sarah warned. "Let him sue," Jonathan said coldly. "By the time Cynthia is done with him, he won't be able to afford a bus ticket, let alone a lawyer." Inside the cabin of Flight 908, the lighting had been dimmed to a soothing twilight blue. Most passengers were asleep, lulled by the drone of the engines. In the front of the plane, in seats 1A and 1B, Gregory and Beatrice Whitmore were enjoying the spoils of their victory. They had reclined their seats into fully flat beds. They were wrapped in plush duvets provided by the airline. A half-empty bottle of Dom Perignon sat in the chiller between them. "This is the life, Bea," Gregory whispered, swirling his glass. "See? You just have to be firm. People like that. They expect to be pushed around. You just have to show them who's alpha." Beatrice giggled, adjusting her sleep mask. "I still feel a bit icky that she sat in this seat before me." "Do you think they sanitized it?" "Don't worry about it." Gregory patted her arm. "We're here now. I'm going to get some shut-eye. Big day tomorrow. I have to charm those bankers at Obsidian. I hear they're sharks." "You'll handle them," Beatrice murmured. "You always do." They drifted off to sleep, completely unaware that the airwaves above them were buzzing with digital commands that would dismantle their lives. Meanwhile, back in row 24, the reality was very different. Economy class was a lesson in endurance. The air was warmer here, thicker with the scent of too many bodies in too small a space. Cynthia Desmond was wedged into the middle seat, her elbows tucked in tight to avoid bumping the teenager on her left or the mother on her right. The baby, a small boy named Leo, had finally stopped crying, but his mother, a young woman named Sarah, looked exhausted. She was bouncing him gently, tears of stress in her own eyes. "I'm so sorry," Sarah whispered to Cynthia for the 10th time. "He's just teething. I know he's loud." Cynthia turned. The cold steel gaze she had leveled at Gregory Whitmore was gone. In its place was a soft maternal warmth that few in the business world ever saw. "Do not apologize," Cynthia said softly. "He is a baby. It is his job to cry. It is our job to be patient." "You're very kind," Sarah sniffled. "Most people, well, the man in front of me slammed his seat back so hard it almost hit Leo's head." Cynthia glanced at the seat in front. People often forget that they were once children, too. "Are you traveling alone?" "Yes," Sarah sighed, shifting the baby's weight. "My husband is in London. He's in the military. We haven't seen him in 6 months. I'm just trying to get there without losing my mind." Cynthia smiled. She reached into a bag, the same bag Gregory had sneered at, and pulled out a small, silk-wrapped package. It was a high-end moisturizer she used for travel. "Here," Cynthia said. "The air is dry. Put a little of this on your hands. The scent is lavender. It might help you relax." As the young mother gratefully accepted the gesture, Cynthia's mind was working. She was observing. She was cataloguing the experience. She noted the worn carpet in the aisle. She noted that the flight attendant for economy looked overworked, serving 150 people alone, while 3 attendants served 12 people in first class. She noted the injustice of it. Not just the racism she had faced, but the structural disdain for the ordinary passenger. "I own 28% of this airline," Cynthia thought, "and I have allowed it to become a cattle car." Up in the cockpit, the mood was tense. Captain Miller had just received a message via the ACR's, Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System. It wasn't a weather update. It was a red flag corporate directive. The message printed out on the thermal paper with a soft hiss. Captain Miller tore it off and read it. His eyebrows shot up into his hairline. Priority, highest from J. Everson, CEO AirAdvantage, to Capt. Felt, 908 MSG. Identify passenger seat 24B, formerly 1A. Confirm ID Cynthia Desmond. Do not, repeat, do not, alert her. Do not attempt to move her back. She will refuse. Your purser made a grave error. Passenger is major shareholder and owner of Obsidian Capital. Prepare for law enforcement. Meet at gate LHR. Targets for intervention. Seat 1A and 1B. Maintain radio silence with cabin crew regarding packs, identity, to avoid panic. Captain Miller handed the slip to his co-pilot. Read that. The co-pilot read it and let out a low whistle. Holy hell. The purser kicked the boss to the back? Arthur, Captain Miller shook his head. That brown-nosing idiot finally kissed the wrong ring. If the CEO is messaging us directly while we're over the ocean, heads are going to roll. Should we talk to Arthur? No, Captain Miller said, his jaw setting. The order says silence. If Arthur knows he just nuked his career, he might do something stupid and cause a scene. We let him serve his champagne. We let the Whitmores sleep. When we land, the ground team takes over. The captain pressed the intercom button. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the flight deck. We've found a bit of a tailwind, so we're expecting to land in London about 30 minutes ahead of schedule. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the flight. In the galley, Arthur the purser was humming to himself as he prepared the pre-arrival snack for the first class. Warm scones with clotted cream. He felt good. He had diffused a difficult situation, kept his Diamond members happy, and maintained the peace. He was already drafting the incident report in his head, framing himself as the hero who managed a disruptive passenger. He walked out into the first-class cabin with a silver tray. "Mr. Whitmore," Arthur whispered gently. "Warm scone?" Gregory woke up, stretching his arms. "Ah, Arthur, you read my mind. Lovely service. Truly top-notch." "Thank you, sir," Arthur beamed. "We aim to please." Gregory took a bite of the scone, crumbs falling onto his chest. "You know, that woman, the one we moved. I hope she's comfortable back there. Actually, no, I don't. Teaches her a lesson about knowing her place." Arthur chuckled politely, though a small seed of unease was beginning to sprout in his gut. He remembered the way the woman had looked at him. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't cursed. She had just documented it. What if she writes a complaint? Arthur worried for a second. No, who cares? She's nobody. Whitmore is a Diamond legacy. The airline will always side with the Diamond legacy. He poured more coffee, blissfully ignorant that his employee ID badge had already been deactivated in the system back in Chicago. Back in row 24, Cynthia felt the plane begin its initial descent. The change in engine pitch was subtle, but she knew it. She took out a small notebook and a pen. She began to write. It wasn't a journal entry, it was a list. 1. Review board composition of Aero Vantage. 2. Liquidate position in Whitmore Logistics. Wait, check exposure first. 3. Establish scholarship fund for aviation diversity. 4. Buy seat 24A and 24C for Sarah and Leo on their return flight. She closed the notebook. The time for observation was over. The time for action was approaching. The fasten seatbelt sign chimed on. "We're almost there," she said to Sarah. "Do you need help with your bags when we land?" "Oh, I couldn't ask you," Sarah said. "You've done enough holding Leo while I ate." "I insist," Cynthia said. "I have a feeling I'll have some people waiting to help us." Sarah laughed. "I wish. I'm just taking the tube." "Not today," Cynthia said, a mysterious glint in her eye. "Today, you are riding with me." The landing gear deployed with a heavy thud, locking into place like the gavel of a judge, signaling the start of a trial. Flight 908 banked left over the grey sprawl of London, lining up for the runway. As the wheels touched the tarmac and the reverse thrusters roared, Gregory Whitmore clapped his hands. "Touchdown, London, baby. Time to make some money." Cynthia Desmond, 7 cabins back, simply tightened her grip on her phone. "Time to collect the debt," she whispered. The seatbelt sign chimed off with a final, decisive bing. Usually this sound triggers the aisle rush, the frantic, uncoordinated ballet of passengers leaping up to grab bags, eager to save 30 seconds after a 7-hour flight. But on flight 908, something different happened. Before anyone could stand, the intercom crackled. It wasn't the flight attendant's voice. It was Captain Miller. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We have a security protocol to address before general deplaning can commence. Please keep the aisles clear. I repeat, remain seated." In seat 1A, Gregory Whitmore huffed, checking his Rolex. Unbelievable. Probably customs checking for fruit or something. This airline is becoming a joke. Remind me to tweet about this, Beatrice. "It's always something," Beatrice sighed, reapplying her lipstick in the compact mirror. "At least we're in the front. We'll be off first." Arthur, the purser, stood by the cockpit door, straightening his tie. He assumed the captain had called the police to escort the woman in 24B off the plane. Standard procedure, Arthur thought. Non-compliant passenger. They'll take her off the back stairs, so the first-class passengers aren't disturbed. The heavy cabin door groaned and swung open. The cool, damp air of London rushed in, mixing with the recycled cabin air. Arthur put on his best professional smile, expecting 2 bobbies, British police officers. Instead, 4 men in sharp, tailored black suits walked onto the plane. They weren't police. They looked like they cost more than the plane itself. They were led by a man with silver hair and an expression of grim determination. This was Sir Richard Sterling, the London station manager for Aerovantage, a man who usually only left his office for royal visits. Behind him were 2 uniformed officers from the Metropolitan Police, their faces stern. Arthur's heart swelled with pride. Wow, he thought. Mr. Whitmore really does have pull. They sent the station manager to apologize to him personally. Arthur stepped forward. "Sir Richard, welcome. The disruptive passenger is in economy, row 24. I can lead you to—" Sir Richard didn't even look at Arthur. He walked right through him, his shoulder checking the purser aside with the force of a battering ram. "Out of the way," Sir Richard hissed. Gregory Whitmore, seeing the entourage, unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up, a wide, smug grin plastering his face. He extended a hand. "Gentlemen, I assume you're here to apologize for the inconvenience. I'm Gregory Whitmore. I know the VP of—" Sir Richard stopped. He looked at Gregory with a mixture of pity and disgust. He didn't shake the hand. "Sit down, Mr. Whitmore," Sir Richard said, his voice carrying the icy command of a headmaster. "Do not speak. Do not move. You are currently under investigation for violating Aviation Security Act protocols regarding passenger intimidation." Gregory's smile froze. "Excuse me? I'm the victim here. That woman—" "Officer," Sir Richard nodded to the policeman. "If he stands up again, restrain him." The police officer placed a hand on his taser. Gregory sat down so fast the air rushed out of the cushion. Beatrice let out a small squeak of terror. The entire first-class cabin watched in stunned silence as the procession of suits marched past the lie-flat beds, through the curtain, past the business class section, and deep into economy. In row 24, Cynthia was calmly packing her book. The passengers around her were whispering, wondering what was happening. Sir Richard reached row 24. He stopped. The other suits formed a protective phalanx around the row, blocking the view of the curious onlookers. Sir Richard bowed. It wasn't a nod. It was a genuine, deep bow of respect. "Miss Desmond," Sir Richard said, his voice trembling slightly. "On behalf of the entire Aerovantage Corporation, I offer you our most profound and shameful apologies. I am Sir Richard Sterling, station manager. I have Mr. Everson on the secure line for you." Cynthia looked up. She didn't smile. She simply held out her hand. Sir Richard handed her a satellite phone. "Hello, Jonathan," she said. "Cynthia, thank God." Jonathan's voice was frantic in her ear. "Are you okay? I have the board convened. We are drafting the press release. We are firing the crew. Just tell us what you need." "I don't need a press release, Jonathan. I need a car," Cynthia said. "And I have a guest. 2 guests, actually." She looked at Sarah, the young mother next to her, who was clutching Leo, looking terrified of the police presence. "This is Sarah," Cynthia said to Sir Richard, "and Leo. They are my travel companions. They will be deplaning with me. Handle their bags, and Sarah needs a car seat for the baby in the transport." "It's already done, ma'am," Sir Richard said. "We have a fleet waiting." Cynthia stood up. She turned to Sarah. "Grab your things, my dear. You aren't taking the tube today." Sarah was shaking. I don't understand. Who are you?" Cynthia picked up her tote bag. "I'm just a woman who believes in good manners. Let's go." The walk back to the front of the plane was a procession of judgment. Cynthia led the way, head high. Sarah followed, bewildered, but safe. The suits flanked them. They reached the first-class curtain. Arthur the purser was standing there, pale as a sheet, trembling. He realized with a sickening lurch that he had made a career-ending miscalculation. Cynthia stopped in front of him. She didn't yell. She lowered her sunglasses and looked him in the eye. "Arthur," she said, "you have a very difficult job. It requires patience and judgment. Today you showed neither. I suggest you update your LinkedIn profile." Arthur couldn't speak. He just stared at the floor. Then they reached row 1. Gregory and Beatrice were sitting there, watching this impossible scene. The nobody from row 24 was being escorted by the station manager and the police like she was the Prime Minister. Cynthia paused at row 1A. She looked at the empty seat she had been forced to vacate. Then she looked at Gregory. "Mr. Whitmore," Cynthia said pleasantly, "you mentioned you had a meeting with Obsidian Capital tomorrow regarding your bridge loan?" Gregory blinked, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Yes? How do you know that?" "I know," Cynthia said, leaning in closer. "Because I am Obsidian Capital. I am the chairwoman of the allocation committee, and I look forward to reviewing your application, personally." The color drained from Gregory's face so completely he looked like a wax figure. His eyes bulged. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The woman he had called affirmative action, the woman he had kicked out, held his financial life in her hands. "No," he wheezed. That's not possible." "Oh, it is," Cynthia smiled. "And Beatrice? You were right about one thing. Security is very important. That's why these officers are here. They need to have a word with you about creating a disturbance aboard a commercial aircraft. I believe that puts your global entry status in jeopardy." Cynthia turned to Sir Richard. "Get them off my plane after I leave, and ensure their luggage is thoroughly checked. We can't be too careful about who we let into the country." Cynthia walked out of the plane, onto the jetway, into the cool London air. Behind her, she heard Gregory Whitmore start to scream, Wait, I didn't know! Miss Desmond, please!" But his voice was cut off by the sharp command of a police officer. "Sir, sit down, now!" The VIP lounge at Heathrow arrivals is a sanctuary of silence, soft lighting, and espresso machines that cost more than a mid-sized sedan. Cynthia sat on a velvet sofa, sipping a chamomile tea. Sarah and Leo were in the adjacent family room, where a concierge was currently helping Sarah call her husband to arrange a surprise pickup in a Bentley. Cynthia wasn't relaxing. She was working. She had her laptop open. The Wi-Fi at Heathrow was fast. It took her 4 minutes to log into the secure Obsidian Capital server. She pulled up the file. Whitmore Logistics, loan application hash 9092. She read the summary. It was grim. The company was over-leveraged. They had bet big on a new shipping route that failed. They were bleeding cash. They needed $15 million by Friday to make payroll and pay their suppliers. Without it, they were insolvent. Cynthia hovered her mouse over the button marked Approve Pending. She clicked the drop-down menu. She selected Reject. In the comment section, she typed, Due to serious concerns regarding the leadership's judgment and risk management capabilities observed directly by the chairwoman, this entity is deemed a high-risk liability. Application denied with prejudice. Initiate immediate recall of existing credit lines. She hit Enter. 3,000 miles away in New York, a server processed the command. Automatic emails were fired off to Whitmore Logistics CFO. their legal team, and their auditors. But Cynthia wasn't done. She opened a second window. This was her personal trading account. She looked up the stock ticker for Aero Vantage, Aero. She dialed Jonathan Everson. "I'm here, Cynthia," Jonathan answered instantly. "We've suspended the crew. We've issued a lifetime ban to the Whitmores. We are drafting a donation of $1 million to the NAACP in your name. Please tell me we're good." "We aren't good, Jonathan," Cynthia said calmly. "But we aren't dead. I'm not going to sell my stock. I'm not going to bankrupt the airline." Jonathan let out a breath that sounded like a sob. "Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia." "However," Cynthia continued, "I want the policy changed. Today. No passenger is ever moved from their assigned seat for another passenger's preference again. If a paying customer is moved against their will, the crew member responsible is terminated, and the passenger receives 10 times the ticket value. I want that in writing." "Done." "It's done," Jonathan promised. "Good. Now I suggest you call the airport police. I believe Mr. Whitmore is currently causing a scene at immigration." And indeed he was. Gregory Whitmore was currently standing in the immigration hall, sweating through his navy blazer. Beatrice was weeping silently beside him. They had been held back on the plane for 20 minutes, while every other passenger deplaned. When they finally got off, there was no VIP cart. They had to walk. When they turned on their phones, the avalanche began. Beatrice's phone pinged with texts from friends, asking why she was crying in a viral TikTok video. Apparently, the teenager in seat 2A had recorded the entire argument in first class and uploaded it with the caption, "Karen and Kevin get owned by secret billionaire. #karma, #flight 908. The video already had 1.4 million views, but Gregory's phone was worse. He had 18 missed calls from his CFO. He dialed the number, his hands shaking so badly he dropped the phone twice. "Dave," Gregory yelled into the phone. "I'm in London. It's been a nightmare. Gregory, shut up." Dave, his usually mild-mannered CFO, was screaming. "What did you do? What the hell did you do?" Nothing. I just had a disagreement on the plane." "Well, your disagreement just cost us the company," Dave shouted. "Obsidian Capital just formally denied the bridge loan. And not only that, they triggered the immediate repayment clause on our existing equipment loans. They cited leadership volatility. Gregory, the banks are freezing our accounts. Payroll is tomorrow. Checks are going to bounce. We are done. We are filing Chapter 11 by morning." Gregory dropped the phone. It clattered onto the hard tile floor of the immigration hall. "No," he whispered. "No, I can fix this. I'll talk to her. She's here." He looked up. He saw the immigration officer in the booth waving him forward. "Next," the officer barked. Gregory stumbled forward, Beatrice clinging to his arm. He handed over his passport. The officer scanned it. The screen flashed red. The officer frowned. He picked up his phone. "Supervisor to desk 4. We have a flagged entry." "Flagged?" Gregory stammered. "I'm a Diamond member. I'm a CEO." "Sir," the officer said, stepping out of the booth, "your passport has been flagged by the airline for aggressive conduct and endangerment. You are denied entry into the United Kingdom pending a review. You'll be held in the detention center until the next available return flight." "Return flight!" Beatrice shrieked. "I'm not going back. We have a hotel. We have reservations at the Savoy." "Not anymore, madam," the officer said coolly. 2 large security officers stepped up behind them. "This way, please," one of them said. As Gregory was led away, he looked across the baggage claim hall. Through the glass partitions, he saw the exit doors slide open. Flashbulbs erupted. A swarm of paparazzi, tipped off by the viral TikTok, were waiting. But they weren't waiting for him. They were photographing a tall, elegant black woman in a charcoal coat who was helping a young mother carry a baby seat into the back of a waiting Bentley. Cynthia paused before getting into the car. She looked back towards the terminal, as if she could feel Gregory's gaze through the glass. She didn't wave. She didn't gloat. She just got into the car and closed the door. Gregory watched the Bentley drive away, disappearing into the London traffic. He turned to the officer. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "Aye," the officer said, grabbing his arm. "Looks like a big one, mate. Mind your head." 3 months later, the grey slush of a New Jersey winter perfectly matched the mood inside the former headquarters of Whitmore Logistics. The building, once a bustling hub of freight operations, was now eerily quiet. The logo on the glass doors had been scraped off, leaving a ghostly outline of the company that used to be. Inside, men in orange jumpsuits were tagging office furniture with auction lot numbers. Gregory Whitmore stood in the parking lot, holding a cardboard box containing the last remnants of his career, a stapler, a framed photo of a golf trip he could no longer afford, and a stress ball. He wasn't wearing his navy blazer with the gold buttons. He was wearing a parka he had bought at a discount outlet. His Mercedes was gone, repossessed by the bank 2 weeks prior. He was driving a 10-year-old sedan borrowed from his brother-in-law, the only family member still speaking to him. The collapse had been swift and total. When the news broke that Obsidian Capital had pulled their funding, the other creditors circled like sharks, smelling blood in the water. Vendors demanded cash up front. Drivers quit. The audit revealed the reckless spending Gregory had hidden for years, the client dinners that were actually family vacations, the consulting fees paid to his own shell companies. But it wasn't just the money. It was the shame. The video of the incident on Flight 908 had been viewed 40 million times. The internet, cruel and efficient, had identified him within hours. He was no longer Gregory Whitmore, CEO. He was first-class Kevin. He was a meme. He was a cautionary tale. A young man in a hoodie walked past him in the parking lot, filming on his phone. "Yo, that's him," the kid shouted. "That's the guy who got owned by the billionaire. Hey, first class, how's the view from the parking lot?" Gregory put his head down and walked to his rusted car. There was no fighting back anymore. He had learned, too late, that dignity isn't something you buy with a platinum card. It's something you earn with how you treat people. Beatrice had left him a month ago. She cited irreconcilable differences, but Gregory knew the truth. She couldn't handle the downgrade. She couldn't handle the social ostracization. The country club had revoked their membership, not because they couldn't pay, though they couldn't, but because the board decided their presence did not align with the club's values of inclusivity. Karma hadn't just hit them, it had erased them. Across the Atlantic, in a rainy London, the atmosphere was very different. In the sleek, glass-walled offices of Obsidian Capital's European division, Cynthia Desmond was reviewing the quarterly reports. The door opened, and a young woman walked in carrying a tablet. It was Sarah, the mother from Seat 24C. She looked different. The exhausted, terrified look was gone. She was wearing a tailored suit, her hair professionally styled. She looked confident. "Excuse me, Miss Desmond," Sarah said. "The board meeting for the Aero Vantage Diversity Scholarship is starting in 5 minutes. The trustees are waiting for you." Cynthia smiled, closing her laptop. "Thank you, Sarah. How is Leo?" "He's wonderful," Sarah beamed. "The daycare center in the building is a lifesaver. And I wanted to thank you again. For everything." After the incident, Cynthia hadn't just given Sarah a ride. She had learned that Sarah was a brilliant logistics coordinator who had put her career on hold because she couldn't afford childcare while her husband was deployed. Cynthia had hired her on the spot to manage the new charitable foundation Obsidian had launched. "You don't need to thank me, Sarah," Cynthia said, standing up. "You are excellent at your job. I merely opened the door. You walked through it." They walked together towards the conference room. "By the way," Sarah said, checking her tablet, "we received an application for a warehouse manager position at one of our shipping subsidiaries in Jersey." The name looked familiar. Cynthia raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "A Mr. Gregory Whitmore," Sarah said, her voice neutral. "He listed his previous experience as CEO. Do you want me to flag it?" Cynthia stopped walking. She looked out the window at the London skyline. She thought about the man who had looked at her with such disdain, who had judged her worth based on the colour of her skin and the seat she occupied. She thought about crushing him. It would be so easy. A single word from her, and he wouldn't even get an interview to sweep the floors. But then she looked at Sarah. She looked at the life she was building, the legacy she was creating. "No," Cynthia said softly. "Process the application like any other. If he is qualified for the warehouse job, give him an interview. Everyone deserves a chance to start from the bottom. Perhaps he will learn something there that he never learned in the boardroom." Sarah smiled. "You are better than I am, Miss Desmond." "It's not about being better, Sarah," Cynthia said, opening the door to the boardroom. "It's about understanding that true power doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be." Meanwhile, in a budget motel near Chicago O'Hare Airport, Arthur sat behind the plexiglass of the check-in counter. He wore a polyester vest that was 2 sizes too big. The name tag said Artie, trainee. "Room 102, Arthur mumbled, sliding a key across the counter to a truck driver. "Breakfast is from 6 to 9. No late checkouts." "Hey, don't I know you?" the truck driver asked, squinting at him. "You used to work for the airline, right? I saw you on the news. You're the guy who tried to kick the boss off the plane." Arthur flinched. He stared at the fake plastic plant on the counter. "You must be mistaken, sir," Arthur whispered. "I've never flown first class in my life." He watched the trucker walk away. Arthur closed his eyes. He could still remember the smell of the warm scones, the feel of the first-class cabin, the illusion of importance. He had traded his integrity for the approval of a bully, and now he had nothing. 1 week later, Cynthia Desmond was back at Heathrow Airport. She walked up to the gate for her flight back to New York. She handed her boarding pass to the agent. The agent scanned it. She looked at the screen, then looked up at Cynthia. Her eyes widened. "Miss Desmond," the agent said, her voice full of genuine respect, "it is an honor to have you flying with us today. We have you in seat 1A. Cynthia smiled. "Thank you." She walked down the jet bridge. She boarded the plane. The new purser, a woman with a kind face, greeted her at the door. "Welcome aboard, Miss Desmond. Can I take your coat?" "Thank you," Cynthia said. She walked to seat 1A. She sat down. The seat was comfortable. The champagne was cold, but this time the atmosphere was different. As the other passengers boarded, a young black girl, maybe 10 years old, walked past with her father. She saw Cynthia sitting in the first-class seat, reading her book, looking like a queen in her throne. The little girl stopped. She stared at Cynthia with wide, awe-struck eyes. Cynthia lowered her book. She winked at the girl. "You can sit here too, you know," Cynthia whispered. "Someday." The girl beamed, a smile that lit up the cabin. "Really?" "Absolutely," Cynthia said. "Just work hard, speak softly, and never ever let anyone tell you where you belong." The girl's father nodded his thanks, and they moved to their seats. Cynthia looked out the window as the engines roared to life. She watched the ground fall away, the cars and houses shrinking into insignificance. She wasn't just a passenger anymore. She was the pilot of her own destiny, and she had cleared the runway for those who would come after her. Gregory Whitmore was in a warehouse. Arthur was in a motel. But Cynthia Desmond was exactly where she was supposed to be, flying high. And that is the story of how one moment of arrogance cost a man his entire empire. It's a powerful reminder that we never truly know who we are dealing with. The person you treat with disrespect today could be the person holding your future in their hands tomorrow. Status isn't written on our foreheads, and true power doesn't need to announce itself. Gregory Whitmore thought he was winning because he had the platinum card. He forgot that the deck belonged to Cynthia. What would you have done if you were in Cynthia's shoes? Would you have given Gregory a job in the warehouse, or would you have crushed him completely? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. We post new dramas every week. Thanks for watching. And remember, be kind. You never know who's listening.